My phone vibrated in the middle of the meeting, the screen lighting up with a familiar name, Jason. At that moment, I thought he might just be asking if I had lunch yet or reminding me to bring home his favorite salad. But I was wrong. Completely wrong. I want a divorce. Those words came through the phone coldly, as if he were announcing the weather or mentioning an unimportant meeting. I froze in the hallway of the office building, feeling like the air around me had suddenly become stifling. You said what? I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. I've already sold the apartment, you need to find a new place to live, Jason said, his tone completely devoid of emotion. It felt like the entire world slowed down around me, all sounds gradually fading away. That apartment wasn't just a place to live, it was the home we had built together, the space filled with our shared memories and dreams. Yet he could say it so bluntly. As if I were nothing more than an uninvited guest in my own home. You sold the apartment? For what reason? I asked again, trying to cling to a sliver of hope that everything was just a misunderstanding. Jason let out a dry laugh, a sound that did nothing to hide his arrogance. Melissa and I need the money to start our new life. She deserves better than a tiny place like that. Melissa? Her name swept through my chest like a cold wind, though deep down, I had suspected for a long time. Hearing her name come out of Jason's mouth still left me reeling. The late nights at work, the sudden business trips, and the growing distance between us. Everything now became as clear as day. I recalled the evenings when Jason came home, his eyes avoiding mine whenever I asked about work. He always had a way of deflecting, just a gentle smile and a brief hug, and I would believe everything was fine. I used to think his confidence came from his stability in his career. But now, I realized it was because he knew he could manipulate my emotions so easily. How long have you been planning this? I asked, my own voice sounding strange and distant in the empty space. For a while, Jason responded, without a hint of remorse. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. This will be better for both of us. I stayed silent, only hearing the thumping of my own heartbeat. I didn't feel shocked anymore. Just an emptiness, a vast void where all my emotions seemed to have been pulled into. Did you ever consider how I would feel? I asked, my voice slow but sharp. Abby, you're always too sensitive. Stop making everything such a big deal, Jason replied, as if I were the one being unreasonable. That was the moment I realized the truth. All along, he had made me believe that every issue in our relationship was my fault, that I was too suspicious, too controlling. But in reality, Jason had been crafting a perfect narrative, turning me into the villain in my own story. You sold the apartment without my consent? What makes you think you had the right to do that? I asked, trying to maintain my composure. I've already taken care of everything, Jason said, his voice unsettlingly calm. All the paperwork is done. You should start packing your things. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. In that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. Either crumble under his coldness or stand up and fight for myself. All right, Jason, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. You'll see just how complicated things can get. I hung up the phone, standing still in the long hallway, the soft yellow light casting lonely streaks across the floor. I felt like I was at a crossroads, with only two options, to fall or to rise and move forward. And this time, I chose to rise. Jason thought he had already won, but he had no idea that the game had only just begun. I was no longer the easily manipulated girl I used to be. I had learned how to protect myself, and this time, I wouldn't let anyone push me out of my own life again. I stood in the long office hallway, the dim lights casting faint shadows on the floor. Jason's call still echoed in my mind, each word like a deep scratch on my thoughts. But instead of letting the pain consume me, I chose to stay calm. Jason believed he had the upper hand, but he had no idea that I had my own cards to play. As I walked into the conference room, I forced a smile at my colleagues, quickly regaining my professional demeanor. The meeting ended, and as soon as I stepped out of the building, I called Emily, my best friend and also my lawyer. Emily and I had known each other since college, and she was always the person I trusted whenever trouble arose. Jason sold the apartment without my consent, I said the moment Emily answered. There was a brief silence before her voice turned serious. Are you sure? He has no right to do that if the apartment is in your name. I smiled slightly. Exactly. I had the ownership transferred to my name earlier when we refinanced. Jason had no idea because he just signed the paperwork without reading it carefully. Emily let out a quiet laugh. Well then, he's brought trouble upon himself. We're going to make sure he understands that things aren't as simple as he thinks. The plan to counterattack began. Emily immediately reviewed the legal documents, confirming that Jason's transaction was completely invalid. We quickly drafted an official letter to the buyer, informing them that the sale of the apartment had no legal standing. Emily also prepared all the necessary documents to take the matter to court if needed. Does he know about this yet? Emily asked as we finished up all the required paperwork. I don't think so, but he'll find out soon enough, I replied, a strange sense of calm settling over me. That evening I returned to the apartment. Everything seemed as quiet as usual, but the atmosphere felt different. I knew the confrontation was inevitable and I was ready for it. Around 7 o'clock Jason came home. He pushed the door open, his face flushed red and his eyes filled with anger. In his hand was a stack of papers and I immediately recognized the letter Emily had sent. Abby, what the heck is this? Jason shouted, his voice no longer holding its usual calm demeanor. I looked up at him, my face showing no emotion. It's a legal notice stating that you have no right to sell this apartment. Your transaction is completely invalid. He froze, then let out a mocking laugh. You think you can outsmart me? This apartment is ours. Half of it is mine. No, Jason, I said, placing the documents on the table. You signed the transfer documents a long time ago. This apartment is entirely mine, and the transaction you tried to make holds no legal value. Jason began to flip through the papers, his eyes darting between the lines. I could see the confusion slowly overtaking his expression. With each page he read, his confidence gradually faded. I didn't know, he muttered, his hands trembling. Exactly. You didn't read the paperwork properly, just signed it because you thought you always had everything under control. I sat down on the chair, my hands clasped together. But not this time, Jason. You've really put yourself in a tough spot now. Jason began pacing around the room, his shoes tapping against the wooden floor with a disjointed, tense rhythm. You can't do this to me. We've been together for 6 years. How could you push me into a corner like this? I raised an eyebrow, a mix of surprise and a bit of amusement. You sold the apartment without asking me, took the money to build a new life with Melissa, and now you want me to feel sorry for you? Jason's face shifted, the redness draining into a pale hue. Melissa. She won't accept this. She thought we were going to have a fresh start. I let out a soft laugh. Then you'd better explain to her how you sold a property that wasn't yours, and if you don't return the money, it won't just be me seeking justice, so will the law. Jason dropped onto the couch, his hands clutching his head as if trying to find an escape. I didn't feel any pity for him, only a sense of relief as the truth finally surfaced. I'll give you some time to pack your things, I said, my voice neither cold nor gentle. But remember, everything here belongs to me. You don't have the right to stay a moment longer unless I allow it. He didn't respond, just sat there with a vacant look in his eyes. The perfect life he had imagined with Melissa was now nothing but rubble. And I, the woman he thought he could easily discard, was the one holding the keys to end it all. I stood up, walked into the bedroom and closed the door behind me, leaving Jason in the living room with his tangled mess of thoughts. Now I was the one controlling this story. That afternoon I sat on the sofa in the living room, sunlight filtering through the curtains, casting soft patterns on the hardwood floor. Everything in the apartment was quiet, except for my steady breathing. Beside me was the stack of divorce papers Emily had prepared. Crisp white pages that held within them a difficult but necessary. I didn't have to wait long. The sound of a key turning in the lock broke the silence and Jason walked in. But what surprised me more was the woman following him. Melissa. She wore a striking red dress, her high heels clacking against the floor with each confident step. Her smile was bright, filled with confidence, as if she were walking into her own home. Look, darling, this'll be our new home, Jason said, his voice brimming with excitement as if nothing had happened. I stood up, my gaze steady on them, but I didn't rush to say anything. Melissa stepped forward, her eyes sweeping over me with a chilly indifference before turning back to Jason. Is this Abby? She asked, flashing a smile that lingered only for a second, like a mask slipping into place. Hello, Melissa, I replied, my voice unnervingly calm. You two showed up just in time. I was about to have a conversation with Jason about staying here. Melissa crossed her arms, a smug look in her eyes. We won't be here for long. Jason said you've already taken care of all the paperwork. I tilted my head slightly, feigning surprise. Jason said that? How interesting. Jason's patience began to wear thin. Abby, stop making this difficult. You know the apartment has been sold. You should pack your things and find a new place to live. Jason, I said, enunciating every word, this apartment has never been sold, and if you've actually received money from a buyer, you've put yourself in a very big mess. Melissa's expression shifted, the smile on her lips vanishing. Wait, what does that mean? You told me everything was settled, that you sold the apartment and we had the money to start fresh. Jason froze, his eyes avoiding Melissa's sharp gaze. I'll explain. It's all just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I let out a small laugh. You tried to sell this apartment without my consent? The problem is, the apartment is solely in my name, and any transaction without my signature is not legally valid. Melissa turned to Jason, suspicion growing in her eyes. Did you lie to me? You said this apartment was yours, that she had agreed to leave. Jason stuttered, his hand clutching the folder tightly. I just wanted to make things easier. I thought if you moved in first, it wouldn't be too complicated. Complicated? I shrugged. You told me over the phone that I needed to find a new place because you had sold the apartment. But it seems you forgot I'm not someone who can be pushed around so easily. Melissa took a step back, her arms falling to her sides. Did you take money from the buyer? Jason didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. Melissa's face fell, as if she had just been pulled from a beautiful dream that turned into a nightmare. What did you do with the money? You said we were going to have a new life. I crossed my arms, my eyes never leaving Jason. If you've spent that money, the buyer might not just want their money back. They could take you to court for fraud. Jason's face turned ashen, his lips moving without sound. Melissa, not waiting another second, spun on her heels and walked out the door. I don't want any part of this, you handle it yourself. The door closed, leaving a heavy silence enveloping the room. Jason collapsed onto the chair, as if all the strength had drained from his body. Abby, I know I was wrong, but you can't treat me like this. We used to love each other. Yes, we used to, I replied, my voice unwavering. But love doesn't mean accepting lies and being taken advantage of. These are the divorce papers. I want you to sign them right now. He looked at the stack of papers on the table, his eyes filled with regret. Do you really want to end everything? We can start over, I'll make things right. Jason, you had your chance and you destroyed it yourself, I said, keeping any emotion from seeping into my tone. I won't give you any more chances. Finally, Jason picked up the pen, his hand trembling as he signed each page. Every signature felt like a period, marking the end of mistakes, of a past I had tried to hold on to, only to realize that letting go was the real freedom. When he stood up, I opened the door for him, feeling like a fresh breeze had just swept through the apartment. Jason walked out without looking back, and I closed the door, locking away everything that belonged to the past. The apartment was now just mine, but I didn't feel lonely. On the contrary, I felt lighter and freer than ever before. This was the fresh start I truly needed. After Jason left, I stood in the middle of the living room, feeling as if I had just woken up from a long nightmare. His belongings were still scattered around, but the heavy atmosphere had vanished. For the first time in months, I could take a deep breath without feeling the weight of anxiety crushing my chest. I started cleaning up, carefully tending to every corner of the apartment. Jason's belongings, from the jacket draped over the chair to the books haphazardly left on the shelves, were neatly packed away. I didn't throw them away or destroy them. I simply returned them to where they belonged. Not here, not in my life anymore. Instead, I chose new things for myself, items that reflected my own taste and style. I painted the living room a soft, calming shade of blue, replaced the heavy curtains with light, airy fabrics, and hung up abstract art pieces I had admired for so long. The fresh touches brought a sense of renewal to the space. Emily stopped by over the weekend bringing a bouquet of fresh flowers and a bottle of fruit juice. This place looks completely different, she said, her eyes sparkling with joy. There's still a bit more to do, I replied, wiping the sweat from my forehead. But at least now it finally feels like my home. We sat at the new dining table, a light-colored wooden piece I had chosen to replace the old worn glass table that Jason had always insisted on keeping. Emily poured juice into our glasses, raised hers, and smiled. Cheers to freedom and a new chapter in your life. And cheers to never letting anyone make you feel small in your own home again, I added. Our glasses clinked softly, the clear sound like the first notes of a new melody. Meanwhile, Emily wasn't just providing emotional support, she was also handling the legal aspects. She worked tirelessly to ensure the divorce process was quick and legally sound. Jason no longer had any chance to cause more trouble. From the assets to the apartment ownership, everything was clearly documented, leaving no loopholes for him to exploit. Jason has signed the divorce papers, Emily announced on a bright sunny morning. He agreed to all the terms. You'll soon be completely free from all ties. Hearing those words, I felt as if I had just been unbound from an invisible rope. A part of me still worried that Jason might stir up more drama, but Emily's determination and thorough legal approach gave me complete peace of mind. Lauren, my best friend from college, suggested we throw a small party to celebrate. She called it a freedom party, and soon enough my living room was filled with laughter and the warm glow of soft yellow lights. Now this is the Abby I know, Lauren said as she helped me decorate the room with colorful streamers. Strong, confident, and not letting anyone walk all over her. The party wasn't extravagant, just close friends, some light snacks, and stories that made us laugh until our sides hurt. Everyone understood that this wasn't just a casual gathering but a moment marking my official fresh start. When everyone left, I sat on my new sofa, the gentle light casting soft shadows through the window. The city outside remained as bustling as ever, but inside I felt a quiet peace. From that point on, my life became much lighter. I started dedicating time to things I had always put off, relaxing mornings with a hot cup of coffee and my favorite book, afternoon walks in the park, watching the green leaves sway in the breeze, and those evenings when I could freely choose any movie I wanted without having to share the remote. I also found joy in my work. I began engaging in new projects, meeting energetic and inspiring colleagues. The focus and passion I brought to my work helped me not only advance in my career, but also see my own worth more clearly. One day, while cleaning out an old closet, I found a photo of Jason and me from our early days together. We were smiling, our eyes filled with hope for the future. I didn't feel regret, just gratitude for the lessons learned. I folded the photo and placed it in a small box, not to hold on to it but to close that chapter, because I understood that while the past couldn't be changed, the future was wide open with new opportunities. I had truly begun a new chapter in my life. This chapter didn't include Jason, lingering pain, or doubts. It was just me, with newfound confidence, steadfastness, and deep self-love. And this time I knew I was on the right path, with every step feeling light and steady. I not only reclaimed my apartment but also took back control of my life. That was the biggest victory of all. Abby's story isn't just about reclaiming an apartment, but about regaining control of her life. From a woman who was once manipulated and deceived, Abby stood up, fought for justice, and rebuilt a peaceful space for herself. She shows us that letting go of toxic relationships isn't a loss but often the first step toward true freedom and happiness. It's a reminder that we all deserve better, as long as we have the courage to change. What do you think about Abby's powerful journey in this story? Have you ever faced a similar situation or have advice for those dealing with family challenges? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more inspiring stories about family life and finding happiness.